But one of the first things that I want to do is work on this acorn squash here. Acorn squash is one of those fall foods that everybody's afraid of. I mean, there are tons of them in the grocery stores and at the markets this time of year, but what do you do with it? Well, you start with your serrated slicing knife because the skin is really tough and you need to go ahead and saw off the top. Set it on a flat surface, we'll saw off the bottom. And really the best way to go about using acorn squash, or any of these squash that are so tough, is to go ahead and just start carving the skin off. All the way around, I'll carve the skin down and along with the contour, the natural contour of the item. And now once I've got all the skin off, I've got myself this orb, a skinless orb, and go ahead and cut down through it lengthwise to expose all those seeds that are in there. And obviously, like all the squashes that we work with, we need to get these seeds out. I like using my portion scoop or my ice cream scoop. See how quick that happens? Left with 2 halves, now I need to cube them into consistent pieces. And using my chef knife down, now with a downward fashion, I can start to cube this acorn squash because we're going to cook it in a dry method, a roasting method. And of course I want things to be consistently sized so that they cook consistently. If I put a large piece of acorn squash next to a small thin piece, well, one is going to be hard and crunchy, one's going to be soft and mushy. So I need to make sure that I cut things into consistent pieces so that they cook consistently as well. And now I've got all this acorn squash cubed up and put in a bowl. The first thing I'm going to make, because it's going to take so long, is an acorn squash gratin. And I've created a white sauce back here on the stove. All right, show that to you. Yep, that's our basic white sauce. It was made with a roux and some milk to make bechamel sauce. And web cooking classes, we get into sauces really quickly. I think it's like week 5 or 6. We teach you the 5 mother sauces so you can make stuff like this. But then I put some goat cheese in it, so we'll call it a goat cheese bechamel sauce. And I'll get a spatula and our bowl of squash. I'll go ahead and add the squash to the sauce. And start tossing the two together, coating all this raw squash in a white sauce made with goat cheese. Now, what's that going to do? Well, if we decide to bake this, which is a dry cooking method, roasting some squash in a dry cooking method, that's going to evaporate liquid. It's going to escape into the air as steam. So anytime we can take something like squash that's going to take a considerable amount of time to cook because it's hardy and coat it in some kind of liquid, it's going to help retain moisture. So now my squash covered in a white sauce. I've got a casserole dish here, but what else can we put in here just to kind of make stuff up? How about, got some walnuts. Let's put some walnuts in there. That's a good fall flavor, right? Using nuts in your cooking gives you kind of a little smoky flavor and a little bit of salty flavor. But now a white sauce with acorn squash that's been cubed that also has some walnuts in it will go into my casserole pan. Laid out in one layer, like that. There's our casserole of squash, but you know what? It's looking a little naked on top. So, one of my favorite things is panko breadcrumbs. I don't know if you've ever seen P-A-N-K-O. They're irregular shaped, they're really crunchy, they're really light, they have a lot of air to them. So let's cover the top of this with some panko. If you wanted to use shredded cheese or Parmesan cheese or more of your white sauce on top, anything. See, now we're starting to think about cooking by the method because I think about what I want to do to this. The inspiration for this recipe, if you will, was the fact that I wanted something I can put in the oven. It started with that. It didn't even start with like, I would really like some squash with goat cheese. It started with, I need something to put in the oven because I got to make 10 things, and I'm already talking too much. So I think about a method, a roasting method for squash. How do I help retain moisture, coating it in a sauce? How do I give it more flavor, give it a flavorful sauce? Let's go down here in the oven. How about our gratin over here, our acorn squash and goat cheese gratin. Where's my spoon? I got a fork over here. Look how nice that looks with the white cheese on the inside.